All right, folks, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else, welcome back to Buffalo Sports Center. I am Don. With me today is Cal. It's episode 4 here of Buffalo Talk Center. Which name are we gonna use? Cal, I don't really know, but it's a pleasure to be talking to all of you guys here again. I know I missed last week's episode. Jaden filled in, and the last week's podcast episode went great, guys. You guys have great chemistry. It's almost as if you've been friends for a long, long time, right?
Yeah,
Cal?
it's almost as if me and Jaden talk about sports about 4 hours every single night and complain about stuff. But yeah, Don, it's been a big week, right? The Bills back in action at mandatory minicamp. Some things we'll talk about with the Sabres later on. Some poking around, they said, with Owen Power and other players potentially, and the entire sports world has been buzzing. Let's start with the Bills, though. Mandatory minicamp, big news. James Cook has shown up. Opinions on that one?
I'm not surprised. He said it to the press this past week. He said, "I like my money." He didn't want to get fined. I think it would have, had he missed the entirety of mandatory minicamp, it would have resulted in something like 140 grand in total fines from the NFL, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
something like that.
right.
And you got to keep in mind he's on a rookie deal, right? These people that are comparing him to T.J. Watt, Trey Hendrickson. Oh, look, James Cook isn't holding out, but you got to keep in mind, if James Cook held out of training camp, he would be making negative money this year, right? And it's one of those things where you just kind of have to wait around and see what happens. You can't take this news as, great news. Oh, James Cook is working towards a deal. He's nowhere close to a deal. Nothing's changed. He just didn't want to get fined.
Exactly. But him showing up to mandatory minicamp does not resolve some of the underlying issues here between James Cook and the Buffalo Bills. You have rumors swirling around about his future, his potential exit. I don't know about you, Kel, but it seems like his exit is probably going to happen after next season, right? With the amount of money he's demanding, I think some insiders are reporting he wants to get paid in the region of $15 million a year. Looking at my list, that would have him tied for third most in the NFL for running backs. He'd be tied with Derrick Henry, who also makes $15 million on a 2-year deal. Above those two, though, would be Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers, making $19 million. And, of course, Saquon Barkley, top paid running back in the NFL, making a little over $20.5 million per year. So do you think that number $15 million is appropriate for a guy like James Cook?
I personally think it's way too high. I'd be okay paying him 8 to 9, and that might come as a shock, but yeah, sure, it worked with the Eagles. They paid Saquon big, they got Saquon, and it led them to a Super Bowl, but that's just not the current NFL, and I still don't think the NFL is trending in that direction. It's still a throw league. It's still, a passing league, and if you're going to pay a running back big time, long term for $15 million, the entire team around him is going to be bad. Keep in mind, the Bills are paying Josh Allen big money. They're not really paying any receivers big money, but that defense, they have to continue to improve that defense because we've seen what happens in the playoffs. A guy like James Cook, again, rumors saying he's unhappy here. He says there's not much to do here. If you look at where he lives in the Hamburg area in a neighborhood where there's not really anything too close to it. So yeah, maybe there isn't anything to do. And, me and you being from a similar area near Buffalo, there isn't a whole lot to do here. I get it, but maybe switch up the vibe a little bit. Maybe, go downtown and try that out, because right now it hasn't really worked for him. But also James Cook kind of seems like a mellow, no fun type of guy. So if you're looking for fun, it really hasn't shown on your face since you've been here. And again, I like James Cook. I think he's a great running back, but the Bills have been known to draft running backs and, trade them or release them after their rookie deals for the last, 10, 15 years now.
Right, and that's been the overall trend. And you know what? If James Cook does go to free agency next offseason, he won't have – there will be a lot of teams going in for him because, let's face it, I think he was the most important player outside of Josh Allen during our playoff run back in January. He was phenomenal in the AFC Championship game, fantastic in the divisional round game. Him and Ray Davis splitting duties. And the last 2 seasons for James Cook has really been nice. He's been the best Bills running back since Shady McCoy.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. I would be really disappointed if James Cook leaves, but Brandon Beane has 2 decisions to make. one, he has to prioritize whether he wants to keep building out his team depth, but if he does that, he's going to lose James Cook. Or he pays his big stars the money they maybe deserve at the expense of team depth. And judging by what Brandon Beane has done over the last few years, especially this offseason, it really seems like he's prioritizing team depth. And I don't know. I don't really see any progress coming anytime soon on a potential James Cook deal. And you talked about it too. And there were some of these rumors a little bit, Cal, about how James Cook maybe doesn't want to be in Buffalo. It's not even about the team, about the money. He lives in, like you said, an area where not much is happening. You almost revealed our locations, chat. Don't try to look that up. You can do that on your own time.
Yeah.
But we know it. There's not a lot happening here in the South towns, and maybe he just wants to go to a bigger market, more stuff happening. Maybe he wants to go towards the South. He played college ball in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
His brother was recently playing for Dallas. Maybe he just doesn't like the weather here.
Yeah, and it's fair enough, right? It is fair enough. But again, you mentioned the AFC Championship. That play that James Cook made at the end zone, extending that ball over the line, that will be forgotten in history, right? 100% forgotten because the Bills ended up losing that game. That was one of the single-handedly best running back plays I've seen on the Bills, maybe ever. Again, you could mention the Shady McCoy snow game play. There's some other ones, but that play was just absolutely incredible. But again, if you look at the numbers, Ty Johnson was almost every bit as good. He didn't have the same amount of reps, but yards per carry, explosiveness, and you pair that with Ray Davis, I think you have a very solid core there with those two. And if you do lose James Cook after this season or you trade him before this season, I don't think it's going to be as big of a loss as a lot of people think. Again, I think James Cook's a great running back. I want to keep him. I'd be okay signing him long term if it's, somewhere, 8 to 9 million. But if it's going to be more than that, I'm more than okay losing him and spending money elsewhere.
Right. And we got two excellent running backs right behind James Cook, right? Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. Both of those guys are great. You can always bring back Christian Wade if you really need it. Frank Gore Jr. as well. These are fine in-house replacements, folks.
Yeah, Frank Gore Jr. is a preseason merchant. I mean, you should have seen that some of these people, and last podcast I was talking about it, the Bills fans that aren't super big football fans, right? They say go Bills, but they don't know the ins and outs, and that's completely fine. I love people that love football. But these people who are like, oh, Frank Gore Jr., this guy is the future. He is so good out there. There was that one iconic call in the WGR where the lady's like, the offense is falling apart. Frank Gore Jr. is just amazing, but everyone else stinks. Like, guys, relax a little bit. It's preseason, But again, Frank Gore Jr., I'd love to see him get some actual reps, and I think the Bills are in for a massive year. Last year at the old stadium, we got to bring this up. There's one preseason game at the old stadium left. Are you going to be in attendance to this, or are you going away? I don't even know.
I will. So my fall semester begins August 17th.
Okay, so that's going to be close.
What's that preseason game?
That's a good. I think
really
it's the first week of preseason, so you might be able to go. But what I was posing up is I think I'm going to go to that one and take one final lap around, not go to any more games in that stadium unless there's a playoff game, and just have a good time, because a lot of people are going to debate whether the new stadium is better than the old stadium in the next coming years, and I think it's hard to be worse than it, but at the same time, there's something about that old stadium that I'm going to miss.
Well, we've never, ever experienced anything other than this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be really sad to see it go. But in terms of old stadiums in the NFL, and I've been to a few stadiums, I don't know how much I am going to miss the Ralph.
Yeah.
It's tough because I would always sit up in the 300s, and my God, during week 15, week 16, you're just getting absolutely crushed up there in the nosebleeds. The wind is in your face. I mean, you can see the skyline of Buffalo, and that's nice. But you're also going to be able to get that from the new stadium. I don't know. The Bills have desperately needed a new stadium for a long time now. The Ralph is falling apart. It's not up for service anymore. The 300 levels are basically crumbling at this point. Uh, it's on one hand, yeah, there's a lot of memories in that old stadium, but I'm more than looking. I'm really excited to see, the new stadium, what it's going to be like, the new amenities. Although, did you saw that report? Apparently, it's not going to be fully completed until
Yeah.
December of 26.
Yeah, that's
Um,
interesting, and I don't know what exactly that entails. If that just means maybe some graphics aren't going to be on the walls, maybe their murals and stuff, and concession stands won't be fully, serviceable and all that sort of stuff. But if there's missing seats or missing, and I know they already kind of have the seats in place and all that, but if there's anything that affects the game or the amount of tickets that could be sold, people are going to be livid because, again, they're already knocking down, 10,000 seats, something like that. So if there's anything that limits even more seats until December, people are going to go ballistic. And I've seen people complaining about season ticket prices, and that's to be expected, right? It's a brand new stadium, and everything just keeps going up in price. It's a tough situation, and hopefully the new stadium lives up to the hype. I could, again, under Pagula, I could totally see this new stadium being just a generic run-of-the-mill thing. I'm hoping that the Buffaloes outside are ginormous. I know we've switched that back and forth with the plans. They were supposed to be, three massive Buffaloes. Then the next plan they dropped out looked like three Buffaloes that a child could, sit on, how small they were. And then they made them a little bit bigger again. Again, a lot of unique features in this new stadium. I'm excited to see it, but one more year at the old one. We'll see how it goes. Could it be the Super Bowl year?
Maybe, yes, I hope so. It's tough to say until you beat the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I won't have confidence in the Bills making the Super Bowl. But Cal, when the new stadium comes out, are you and Jaden gonna go to the new stadium, right? Find wherever these little buffaloes are, and you're gonna measure them,
Mm-hmm.
hold truth to power. They told us they'd be ginormous,
Mm-hmm.
and they better be ginormous, okay?
So
Hold truth to power, Cal. This is what we do here at Buffalo Sports Center. This is our mission. Hold Terry Pagula accountable. You told us they'd be 2-foot buffaloes, not one.
I'll stand there with the yardstick if I have to and take a picture. If these buffaloes are not the size, I am writing a formal complaint to the county or to Erie County and the city of Buffalo, and we'll get something done about that for sure. But another thing I want to bring up with the Bills. All of a sudden, the Bills are on Hard Knocks, something that was revealed a couple weeks ago. That could create a lot of drama. It also could kind of help team camaraderie. It's one of those things that could go either way, and it really is no in-between there. Another thing with the Bills during the offseason, they're going to be back in Rochester for training camp. So what do you expect from Hard Knocks? Again, we have a lot of characters on this team. I'm sure there'll be a lot of funny moments. Do you think it could create a couple of tense moments as well? Of course, they're going to be showing roster cuts. They're going to be showing the ins and outs of training camp. I know the Bills are a somewhat secretive team, right? They don't like to give a lot. Brandon Beane, doesn't give these analysts and, reporters a whole lot of news. Anything that's reported about the Bills is usually fake. What do you think Hard Knocks is going to do when they're in their face 24/7 with a camera?
It's going to be really interesting because, like you said, they are extremely secretive. And Sean McDermott, he didn't sound all too pleased. I think this is a trend across all of the 32 NFL teams. Nobody wants to have themselves opened up like this on Hard Knocks for the entire country to see. Maybe some of their tactics, some of their relationships inside the building. You lose a sense of authenticity, I think, because
Yeah.
everyone's on alert, right, with these cameras
100%.
being on right on the wall, on a fly on the wall. It's interesting. I don't know what the procedure is. Are they always constantly recording everything, or do they have to gain permission for some things? I know they've been kind of pulling it back, especially for the Hard Knock in-season
Yeah,
series.
I know the in season has certain days that they can't show because it is like plays and stuff like that. And of course, you don't want the Bill Belichick's of the world corrupting that footage and sending it elsewhere. But I think in the off season one, they can just go in your face at all times. And we saw it with the Giants a couple seasons ago, and the Giants were made absolute fools because of that Hard Knocks. The whole Saquon situation and all that. And that's our old buddy Joe Shane as GM and Brian Dable as head coach. So, Brandon Beane knows what's coming. Sean McDermott, they're both very professional guys. Football, take that outside the window. I think both of these guys are two of the safest guys in the NFL. I don't think they're going to slip up and say anything crazy. There might be a couple funny moments that, Brandon Beane slips up. Maybe some Pat McAfee appearances where they're saying some stuff before it goes live. But I really am not too concerned. I'm more concerned about the players, what the players have to say, because, again, this is a Buffalo team that's, been very respected league-wide, right? Everybody respects Josh Allen. Everybody respects, Deion Dawkins, players like that. I would just hate for one of those guys to say something foolish, and all of a sudden the reputation of the team is ruined. Maybe that's what they need, though. Maybe they need to switch it up, because the last couple of seasons, they've just kind of been bullied in the playoffs.
Anything to change it, I guess. As long as Sean McDermott doesn't bring up planes or flying planes or anything motivational regarding planes, I think we're good.
What was that guy's name again?
Yeah,
I always forget. As long as he's not there.
What, Tyler Dunn?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the hit piece of the century from Tyler Dunn over at what's his little website? Go Long.
I don't know. He might have single-handedly saved the Bills' season that season, though, because let's just say after that hit piece came out, the Bills started to win football games and rally around McDermott, and it worked out. But absolute craziness. Something that was brought up. We could switch into NBA now. We'll get back into Buffalo to talk about the Sabres. NBA Finals tied 2-2. That's not what I want to talk about. Let's talk about the Knicks. Still have not found a head coach. They've been asking about every team in the league for permission to talk to their head coach. It hasn't happened. Mark Jackson, a name that's been brought up. Do you know the infamous Mark Jackson moment on air calling LeBron?
I'm not
sure.
So Did he glaze him?
I have to explain it here, because this got brought up the other night, and we have to expose this. He's on the call with Mike Breen and Van Gundy, the iconic trio, and somebody brings up Savanna James, right, LeBron's wife, and all of a sudden Mark Jackson just randomly starts saying something. He goes, people, say she's all city and give her flack, and then he says, I'd hit it out the park with all due respect. And it was not punished whatsoever. You guys can look up that clip on YouTube. I mean, this guy is absolute jokes. And if he becomes the next coach, I mean, we might all be in for it. A guy who quite possibly could have led the Warriors to the absolute success that they had, but they got rid of him just before the dynasty happened, and Steve Kerr is the hero.
So I found it already on YouTube. Yeah. I don't know if Spotify or YouTube are going to copyright this, but so whatever.
Yeah.
Kevin loved the rebound. I'm shocked you downplayed Savanna. He said she was all city. James again from downtown. And I'd hit out the park. No question.
And with all due respect, just had to throw that in.
I mean,
thanks. That absolves you.
I mean, how do you get away with that, right? He continued to call on ESPN after that and was hired by MSG as a Knicks announcer. Never got the full job, though. They cut him before he was able to make an appearance. But yeah, that's something that happened. Finals, I'm still riding with the Thunder. It's 2-2. The Pacers have shocked me. I think the Pacers still have that voodoo magic that they're using. But the Thunder were able to kind of hammer it home and tie the series. And now I think they have all the momentum, right? If the Pacers made that series 3-1, it was probably over. I think that was for the series, Game 4, and I think the Thunder saved themselves.
Well, yeah, the moment. What's his name? What's his real nickname, Cal? You wanna say
the
it,
Pacer?
or we're gonna get demonetized?
Yeah, let's not.
The Pacer. Yeah, Tyrese didn't have his clutch moment.
Yeah.
I was walking out of the Kendrick concert up in Toronto, and someone I had heard, they were like, SGA, he just got handed the game. They just sent him to the free throw line again with like 4 seconds, and that's all I heard. I haven't really watched the NBA Finals. I've been more watching the NHL Finals.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just I don't have a lot of interest in the Thunder and Pacers. I mean, if it's on and I really don't have anything else that I feel like watching, I'll throw it on. It looks like it's a good series. I mean,
yeah.
From all is saying it's going to go to 7, right? That's the vibes right now.
It very well could. It's been close. But you bring up the NHL series and the Stanley Cup final. Going into it, I wasn't super excited about it, but these games have been absolute bangers. I mean, we are witnessing one of the best Stanley Cup finals we've seen in quite some time. And again, a rematch of last year. I guess it makes sense. I should have expected it to be a little more gritty. But these games, I mean, OT, double OT, the comeback wins. We've had almost everything in this series that you could want. And there's still a whole lot of hockey left to be played. I still am predicting the Panthers. I know you had the Oilers. Do you have the Oilers still winning it?
Still have the Oilers. Keeping my prediction intact. They fought back. Calvin Pickard, future Buffalo Sabre number one goalie, okay? Kevin Adams is seeing another Carter Hutton. He is the next Carter Hutton and Eric Comrie. Go get him, Kevin. Yeah, that's some big moves. That's the moves we're talking about. The activity. In all seriousness, though, yes, I'm still sticking with my Edmonton prediction. The depth has been there. Jeff Skinner almost scored. Please let him score.
I'd love it.
I think my prediction, I didn't really fully explain it as well as I should have in that first episode, but the biggest reason why I'm supporting Edmonton is because of Jeff Skinner. What a dog. What a dog. He's fought through the season, not been in the coach's good graces. Chris Knobloch, notable Bills hater.
Yeah. Boo.
Yeah, screw him. But Jeff Skinner, I am still so sad that the Sabres got rid of him, sacrificed his soul for the scoreboard.
For nothing. For absolutely nothing. And to this day, I'm fired up about it.
They could have kept him for one more season, right? He was still doing okay. I mean, the second... Yeah, whatever. No, we're not doing this again. We are not doing this. We've already covered this on the channel. Yep. This and Elias Pettersson, I think, are top 2 for the most things we have
Elias
covered on the
Pettersson's
channel.
Still on the table to this day. We'll see. One of the options.
Neil, you got Neil fired up right there. If he's still watching at this point, Neil, we've seen your comments. We're not just like hearting and blindly, okay? We read them, we see them. No, Elias Pettersson's going to stay in Vancouver. But the point is, I'm rooting for Jeff Skinner. Love him. He was my favorite Sabre when he was still here. I miss him, and I hope he wins the Cup. I just hope that a non-Florida team does it this year. Get a Canadian team, finally. Let's get a Canadian team. They're 0 for the last 7 for Canadian teams when they show up to the Stanley Cup Finals. 0 for their last 7. So it's got to happen at some point, right?
I mean, I got nothing against Canada, but it's one of the funniest jokes in hockey that a Canadian team cannot win the Cup. I am more than okay with a Canadian team losing again. I think it's hilarious. Jeff Skinner, again, one of the few bright spots the Sabres had over the last, 7 years. So, again, always rooting for him. If the Oilers do end up winning, my McDavid rookie card goes up in value and Jeff Skinner gets a Stanley Cup. I won't be mad. But Florida winning would, again, make the Bills hater pretty angry and would keep the Cup in the United States, which, again, like I said, doesn't matter too much. Just a funny joke. If you want to talk about the Sabres, I'm ready to talk about the Sabres. Bowen Byram, a lot of interest in Bowen Byram. Prepared to get a late first-round pick or some absolute washed-up scrub that isn't going to see the ice. Another name that's been floating around, how about Owen Power? Teams are poking around about him. How much poking is being done? We don't know. How much interest the Sabres are letting happen? We don't know. Now, all the Sabres analysts have kind of fought this narrative back and said, it's not happening. They're not going to trade Owen Power. I saw a comment in our YouTube section. I might make a video on it. Let's see where you stand on this. You are Kevin Adams. You have to choose one of the 2 to keep and one of the 2 to trade. Keep in mind trade value, how much you could get back, and how much the player you keep would help you in the future. Also, contracts, you'd have to pay Bowen Byram. Owen Power's under contract and getting paid a good amount. Who would you keep and who would you trade out of those 2?
I would keep Owen Power 10 out of 10. In terms of trade value, comparing trade value, who would get you more? Of course, it'd be Owen Power. He's already at the same level that Bowen Byram is now. The difference is Owen Power is 3 years younger. Yeah. And I get all the criticisms with Power. Oh, he's not physical. He doesn't box out in front of the net. But he is so good at transitioning from the defensive zone. His exits are fantastic. He is one of the best defensemen in the NHL in that specific statistic. Don't ask me for the specific statistic. I am just paying what I've heard and what I've seen, too. Every time that Owen Power plays with Bowen Byram, they elevate each other's game.
Yeah.
Why? Because, they're both really good. They're fast skating out of the zone, get passes up quick. He and Dahlin, and when I say he, it's Power and Dahlin. They're two of the best defensemen in the NHL at doing something like that. And the ceiling on Owen Power is much higher than Bowen Byram. And look, Bowen Byram is a very good defenseman. He showed that last season. He almost got 40 points despite not being on the power play, either PP1 or 2. So there's still a lot of value. There's still a lot of skill with Bowen Byram. I'm not knocking him on that. But they're both equal. And when I take everything on balance, Owen Power has the potential to become another Norris-level defenseman. Him and Dahlin, you have two Norris-level defensemen on your roster. All right? Dahlin, he's currently that Norris-level guy. Of course, we know Owen Power. A lot of people love to hate Owen Power. But, folks, when he leaves the lineup, you notice the Sabres start losing a lot. When either him or Dahlin exit the lineup, the depth on defense hurts, and that means more goals going in, more than all the Sabres already ship in. So
yeah, and Owen Power's a strong guy.
Power.
Don't get me wrong. In terms of NHL players, though, he's got to be near the bottom right now. But we saw the same thing with Dahlin. It's the exact reaction we saw from Dahlin the first 5 years of his career. He's too soft. If he was better defensively, he'd be a great defenseman, blah, 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 blah. Now Dahlin's an absolute wrecking machine on the ice. He's blowing people up. He's physical, right? And he's just a demon out there. If Owen Power could hit that level of, progress, of development with his body, I think you, again, like you said, you have two candidates right there in Dahlin and Power. Byram, he's never going to be that guy, right? He's strictly an offensive defenseman. He doesn't have the bigger body. Would I like to keep Bowen Byram? Sure, but I think you could get something you need a lot more in a defensive defenseman with him. There's been some rumors that they're trying to get a right-handed defensive defenseman for him, potentially a late first-round pick as well to swap. Again, will they actually swap that pick if they get it? Probably not. It's Kevin Adams, but it's worth a shot. And potentially a third-line forward as well, they're saying they're looking for. So, hey, if the offers continue to build up and up and up, I think it's going to take a little bit for them to trade him because we haven't seen any other defensemen get traded, and until the Stanley Cup happens, I don't think we're really going to see any other trades besides the Chris Kreider trade, which we could talk about. What the heck is Anaheim doing, letting the Rangers off the hook? Again, another Eastern Conference team just gets bailed out money-wise. But, we'll save that for a little bit later. But I agree with you. I think Power's the one you got to keep. As much as he ticks me off watching and streaming these games, and every time in front of the net he's crisscrossed and like a baby deer, falling over, he's going to develop good. Once he gets, bigger muscles and, develops as, again, he's super young, right? Once he gets a little bit older and a more veteran in this league, he is going to be a very good player. Excited to see it happen, just like it did with Dahlin.
Absolutely. Their career trajectories are almost identical. If you look at their year 1 to year 2 to year 3, it's basically the same, right? Dahlin looked okay, but wasn't physical enough in year 1. Took a step back in year 2, took a baby step in year 3, but then he exploded afterwards. He became an elite defenseman here in the NHL, and now he's placing in the top 7 for Norris voting, or top 6. So I think we'll see the same thing happen with Owen Power, like you said. That's not something that'll be the case, I don't think, ever with Bowen Byram. Although there's still probably a little bit of ceiling that we haven't quite reached yet with Byram. We haven't quite seen it just yet. But you talked about some of the offers, and I think it's going to be a pretty substantial trade. We're going to probably... We talked about this a few weeks ago, doubting whether or not Kevin Adams would be able to get anything of value. We joked that he would trade Byram for a second and a bag of peanuts. But it really does seem like possible. Now it's going to be it's still possible, right? But with all the buzz generating around the NHL, it sounds like Bo Byram is the top defenseman to get right now in the trade market, which is... And that's great for Buffalo because you can really drive up that value. You talked about maybe getting a late first-round pick. I've been hearing a lot of mock trades between the Sabres and the Sharks, right? The Sharks got a couple of first-round picks they can get. San Jose's, I think, they got pick 30.
Yeah.
So the Sabres can trade, Byram to San Jose for pick 30. plus, probably another defenseman. And then, like you said, they can flip that pick 30 for a guy like Michael Kesselring of the Utah Mammoth, or, I don't know, Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars.
There you go.
He's not a defenseman, but that's an exciting top 6-4 that's apparently being shopped right now. And if I'm Kevin Adams, I'm seriously considering that. And, there's a lot of teams, especially on the Western Conference, that have a lot of cash ready to spend, and a lot of them have holes that Bo Byram could easily plug on the back end. So
yeah, it's a rare
I think it's going to
problem
be a
to
very
have.
exciting few weeks.
It's a rare problem to have with the Sabres having too many offensive defensemen, right? 'Cause a lot of those teams are looking for that Bowen Byram to be their Rasmus Dahlin, to be, their potential Owen Power, their offensive guy. So you can take advantage of a lot of teams, and that's something the Sabres really have to start doing. How many times have we seen when the Sabres are $20 million, $10 million under the cap, they don't even try to make deals to get free picks? All these other teams do it every single year. They don't do anything like that. Bowen Byram, again, I see a lot of people saying, could you imagine he wasn't an RFA and he was on a contract? He'd be worth even more. I don't necessarily agree with that, because it does make sense, but then you think about it, say Bowen Byram was on a big long-term deal, it might be a little harder to move him because teams know it's going to be a longer-term thing. Now every team is available to trade for Bowen Byram. They could sign him to a bridge deal. They could sign him to a long-term deal. They don't have they have all the power with an RFA if we trade the rights over. So it might even make him more valuable, just, his situation alone. That's not, a going theme. Usually RFAs, you worry about the contract and if it's a one-year thing. But I think with Bowen Byram, a guy who, wants big money but knows he's not worth top money in the league, I think it could be a perfect situation to absolutely scam a team. And I'm not expecting it because, again, what we've seen in the past from Kevin Adams in this regime, but it's very possible. And I think the Sabres, if that's, one of their big 3 moves this offseason, it could lead them to the playoffs.
Absolutely. If you can replace Bo Byram with a guy like, again, Michael Kesselring, he's one of my favorites right now on the potential trade markets. There's other guys like Jordan Spence, although I think he's a very similar skill set. I don't. That'd be kind of redundant again. There's a few other guys out there. Some, not many, on the free agency market, but I think the lack of free agency options right now for defensemen is driving up Bo Byram's value even more. So Kevin Adams, Jarmo Kekalainen, everyone in that Sabres front office, get anything you can for Bo Byram. If he's going to leave, which it seems nearly 100% at this point, get whatever you can for him. And then you take some of those assets and you flip him. I want to see an aggressive Sabres management this offseason. No more just sitting around, waiting around, hoping that your guys internally develop, because we've seen that strategy time and time again fail. It's time to strike. Kevin, your job is on the line. As much shit as we all give you for the job that you've done over these last 5 years, we still want you and this team to succeed and to be good.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, it's you look at Kevin Adams' situation, and again, we're not going to root against our GM. That has never made sense to me. Everyone's always like, "Oh, let's get him fired. Let's get him fired." How about we just make a couple of good moves and make the playoffs? That sounds a little better to me than firing another GM and doing the whole shebang over again. Let's talk about JJ Peterka, because that's a name I'm seeing in a lot of mock trades. One of those guys who's a little unhappy here, that's going to have to be paid big money. Do you get rid of him now while the value's high? I mean, I own 2 JJ Peterka jerseys. I'm a huge fan of his. Have been watching him since his Munich days. Wanted the Sabres to draft him. They did. With that being said, I mean, this team's at a point now where I wouldn't look away from it. I don't know if I'd pull the trigger on a deal like that, but if the return is right, I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, I generally agree with you on that. Although, in terms of reality, I don't think that the Sabres seem all too interested in getting rid of JJ Peterka. And, I don't know. I think if you're the Sabres and you're looking at the situation and all the options you have on dealing with Peterka, your best option at this point is probably to give him a bridge deal, 2 to 3 years, $6 to $7 million a year. It's risky. Yep. We did it with Sam Reinhart, and it backfired big time. And there's a high likelihood that JJ Peterka becomes the next Sam Reinhart for us, which is why we need to keep him in-house. I don't want to hear anything about right mix. We can't be subtracting from our core. We need to be adding to our core. We get rid of Peterka, but who do we replace with him? I mean, the only way I would be okay with getting rid of Peterka is if we use him in a trade to get someone in his exact same position that is better than him at this point. And I'm going to bring up his name again. Second time I'm mentioning Jason Robertson here in this episode. If you can flip Peterka for Robertson, that's something I can stomach.
It's better
right?
short term. I think it's going to burn you long term just because I think Peterka's ceiling, I think me and you can both agree, is just through the roof, right? He's just lacking a little bit of confidence and lacking a little bit of puck skills. I think if he improves on both of those areas, again, until you win games and until you make the playoffs, confidence with this whole team is going to be down. I get it. But if you can improve on both of those areas, JJ Peterka, again, I will continue to say he can become one of the best players in the league. And I'm talking top 10. I think he could be a top 10 player in the league, household name. That's how good I think he could be. It's just a little ways away. Jason Robertson, again, one of those guys who definitely has more name value, is a better player right now, could help you more right now. If that's what you need to do to make the push and maybe that gets you to the playoffs over anything for me. Because if you're not making the playoffs, I'm sick of these prospects. I'm sick of these guys who could be something. If you could get someone that is something, you might just have to do it. And if it costs you in the long run, so what? You got to make up for it, and you got to, continue to get these people like the Bills are doing. I hate to keep comparing the Sabres to the Bills, but you can't just say, oh, this is our group of players. Hopefully they do well. You got to improve every year, and if that means blowing it up and getting some of your core away, and some of your core ends up becoming superstars. Well, guess what? It already has. Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart. You look around the league, your former core is all superstars, and you couldn't make it work with them. So you gotta move people, and you gotta find the perfect, like you said, mix of guys. And if the mix of guys that is here right now doesn't work, you might have to do a complete overhaul. And again, we're not rebuilding again. It just cannot happen. It cannot happen. A team 14, 15 years into a rebuild can't happen.
Exactly. If I see now, okay, let's branch off a little bit of Peterka. There was that rumor from Elliot Friedman, and the quote was kind of taken out of context here. I listened to the full, minute clip before and after, and he said that there's a slight possibility, but that the Rangers resent the accusation that maybe they'd be in on the offer sheet market. Mm-hmm. Cal, if a team were to go bonkers in the next week or two, or the next week or two after the conclusion of the Stanley Cup Finals, and they decide to offer sheet Peterka, say to a 4-year, $7 million deal, which would net the Sabres, how much would that get us? 2 firsts and a second?
Yeah, it'd be a lot.
I don't remember It would be pretty substantial. What would you do then if you're Kevin Adams?
So obviously Kevin Adams is talking to every team right now about the players to be traded. So he has a good range. He knows what he would need to get guys. He knows if he'd have to overspend or stuff like that. So he has a price for all these guys that he's targeting. So I think he would know, right? If he knows he's getting 2 firsts and a second back, he would know what that could get him. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say I trust Kevin Adams, but I kind of have to, right? If he thinks that, all right, I have a deal in place for Jason Robertson, and I have a deal in place for Elias Pettersson, and I could get both of them for JJ Peterka, that's a no-brainer, right? You have to do it. But if you're sitting there and saying, well, that first-round pick could get me this B-level defenseman and this third-line winger and maybe the second-line center, then you're going to hold off. So I think it really just depends how the market's acting. You can't take a chance with that, though. I think if he's in between something, you don't want another Marty Nakos where all of a sudden, the Sabres buy out Skinner and they think they're going to get Nakos for, whatever, and then he's only willing to sign a 2-year deal, and then the Sabres back out of that and don't do anything with the money. You can't do that again. So unless you have a deal worked out and you're like, all right, yep, there's our free assets. We're using that in 2 trades, getting 2 good players for them. I don't think you can do it. If you have one player that you could, they don't want Peterka, but they want the first-round picks, maybe you consider it a trade, a 1-for-1, a hockey trade, as Kevin Adams says. And again, I don't want to trade Peterka, but we need new faces in here. And he's one of those guys who just has a ton of value because I think a lot of the smart teams in the league see what I see in him and see he can be a top player in the league.
Yeah, I agree. But Cal, one last thing before we are going to conclude this episode. A few weeks ago, we talked about, and you even talked about it with Jaden last week about rappers and whatnot, delving into the pop culture. All right, and I just got to inform you and the crowd, whoever is listening, that I did go to the Kendrick Lamar concert up in Toronto a few days ago. At the time, by the point you guys are listening, it would have been this past Friday. And I got to say, I stand on my take that Kendrick won the beef. Kendrick is all-time better than Drake. Drake could never have the performance that Kendrick just did. He went into Toronto and performed Not Like Us, and he had 60,000 people at the ballpark screaming the lyrics with him. Drake could never go to L.A. or Compton and do the same thing.
Yeah, it's a bad look for Drake. It's a bad look. Again, that song is old at this point now too, right? It's no longer, you're singing along because it's a good song. It's out. That song's an older song now, and I know a lot of people are absolutely sick of that song, but they still absolutely scream that, and it's a bad look for Drake. Keep in mind, a lot of people in Toronto are probably coming from New York, probably coming from Detroit, probably coming from different areas. So it might just be, another mix of people where it's not. Because keep in mind, right, a lot of people in Toronto hate Kendrick Lamar, and maybe they didn't go to the concert, sold their tickets online, and all the cities around like Buffalo, like Detroit, other areas, Hamilton, which isn't really Canada, but it is. Some areas that might not be as passionate about Drake. Maybe they sold the tickets, but it's without a doubt a bad look for Drake. Again, Drake hasn't really put out any great music as of late either, so if he wants to clap back at this, I think it's a little too late for that, and I think he should probably just move on, make a banger album, and that would speak for itself. How was the concert overall, though? I mean, performances, pyro, who was the openers? Tell me about that. Was it SZA and all that?
So it was a phenomenal. It was the best concert I've ever been to. DJ Mustard was the opener, and then it's there's no it's both Kendrick and SZA's tour, so they're going one for one basically with songs. He'll do 3-4 songs in a row. She'll do 3-4 songs in a row. They'll do a couple of their collab songs, right? It's a lot of back and forth. The pyro was excellent. I mean, fantastic. But again, one of the best concerts I've ever been to, folks. If he's going near where you're at, within an 8-hour radius, go. I couldn't recommend it enough. You should go to it. He's phenomenal. No autotune. He actually raps every single word, not like some of these other rappers that'll, they'll have the background track, the background feed playing over, and he'll just say, or they'll say a word every few minutes or something. It's not like that. He actually performs, and
you gotta respect
the atmosphere is just great. It's for a fellow short king, I see myself in him a little bit. Some goat, some game changer right there. No, not really. But Cal, I think that's gonna do it for me. This is already our longest episode of Buffalo SportsCenter. Four episodes in, Cal.
Yep.
About to hit the 45-minute mark. Anything you want to say here before we head out?
I think that's gonna be it. By the time we do the next episode, we could have new champions in the NHL and NBA, so that's something to look forward to. And I think, again, leave comments and like the podcast on Spotify or YouTube. Tell us any topics you want us to talk about next week or in the coming weeks. I do want to say next week, Frank Summers, I believe, will be our guest on the podcast. And then we will have Casey Nelson and some other players coming on later on, some UV players and some former UV players as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Cal, do you want to explain who Frank Summers is real quick before we head out?
Yeah, we can do a little bit. Frank Summers, former NFL fullback, played with the Bills. I'm just going to pull up his kind of card.
You can see how much prep we've done so far.
Yeah. I think he was on the Steelers for a little bit as well. I just want to give years and all that sort of stuff. See if it pops up here. But yeah, it's definitely it'll be a fun podcast for sure. Career stats. Let's see if he's got much here if my internet wants to work. But again, kind of an insight on those former Bills teams, the drought era Bills, which again, it's all fine and dandy now, but it would be fun to hear some former stories. Yeah, played with the Steelers in 2009, bounced around some training camps, then with the Bills from 13 to 14, a little bit into 15. Kind of one of those preseason guys that got some reps in the regular season, a touchdown in 2013 as a fullback, and then a touchdown in 2014 as well.
Yeah, so we are looking forward to that. Hopefully the interview goes great, and the conversation,
Yep.
whatever, the sit-down, BSC sit-down
Oh, yeah.
with Frank Summers. Yeah, whatever we're going to call it. We're looking forward to it. We hope you guys are as well. And eventually, in a few weeks, we'll have the draft and the NHL free agency.
Yep.
So a lot to look forward to in the next few weeks, Cal. But folks, if you're still with us at this point, 45-plus minutes in, thank you so much for watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, make sure to like, follow, subscribe. You know the shebang. Support this program in any way that you can. But again, I was Don. This is Cal. This here is Buffalo Talk Center. And we hope to see y'all whenever or wherever. Goodbye.